Hello and welcome to the Abundant Living Ecuador podcast. You're here with us on our inaugural podcast. My name is Jesse Bayer. I'm here with Darnell Dunn. Together we're the co-founders and managing partners of Abundant Living Ecuador. And we hope to bring you a entertaining and more importantly informative weekly podcast chatting about Ecuador, our experiences here, business opportunities here, our business for people who are looking for information on Ecuador, looking to relocate or invest in Ecuador. We hope that this is really aimed at you. No production first time around. We may get to those in future dates, but here we are. So we just want to welcome you in. Thanks for being here with us. And this episode is going to cover really our story. What brought us to Ecuador, how we got to this point, what we found when we came here, and sort of where we're at and what the opportunities are here, and what the process is like, and really all things Ecuador. So Darnell, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll start.
Yeah, sure. Thanks everybody again for tuning in. My name is Darnell Dunn, born and raised in Boston. Left a career in financial services as an investment consultant for about 5 years or so. And really my reason for coming down here was just to have a different lifestyle than I had, working a lot, and felt that at that point like I was having to make a final decision or something that seemed final about what I wanted to do and where I was going to live. And I wasn't really comfortable with that direction so much. And at the time, Jesse approached me. He had been in my ear about doing a development here at first it kind of evolved. It started with South America and we ended up choosing Ecuador, and we moved down here a little bit over 2 years ago. To find a piece of property. We ended up finding it, and going through that process of the research, we figured out that the process was a lot different than buying a piece of property in the States, that there was a lot of people who were going to be looking to buy properties in South and Central America over the foreseeable future, and that we could really help them by not only having gone through our own mistakes and taken our own lumps, but also having heard some horror stories from other foreigners who we had met after coming here. So we started a real estate company, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's funny. You reminded me when you said that. I remember talking to you at that time in the last several months when you were still in Boston working for Putnam Investments, and doing well, making good money, all of that. But I remember just how miserable you were at that time before coming down here. And it's interesting to have watched you over the last couple of years, just how much happier you are, how much more you enjoy life. But I have a different but similar story. I was in New York City. I was investing in real estate. I was pursuing an MBA, and my major impetus for coming down here was really twofold. One, it was some things I didn't want to be around for in the States. And then secondarily, it was, or not secondarily, but the other reason was that I was the project that you mentioned. So it was very big change. Made the choice. We came down in, I guess it was the end of July, right? July 31st, I believe.
Yep.
2013. And we spent 3 weeks traveling around Ecuador. We saw a good piece of the country. Not the whole country, but a good piece. Got a good sense of the coast, the mountains, the various regions. That was an eye-opening experience for sure. Settled in the south. You settled in Loja, which is a city of about 200 to 250,000 people here in southern Ecuador. I settled in Vilcabamba. Originally, I live in Loja now as well, but I settled in Vilcabamba, which is about 35 to 45 minutes outside of Loja by car. And as you said, we went through the land search process, which yeah, it really opened my eyes as well. I mean, I think we both had the same experience in terms of, doing the due diligence on various properties, looking for various properties. It's just so different. No title insurance in Ecuador. No, the due diligence process is very different. Chain of ownership, ownership chain is different. So you can have owners who may have a claim on a property that isn't immediately obvious when you're checking out the title or researching it. You've got protected land here. You've got land that if you don't go check with the ministry that covers that particular protection, government protection that could be on the land. You could, we've obviously known people that this has happened to. You could purchase land that's in a protected area, can't build a road, can't build a house, can't build on it. So, there's a lot of things, and also I guess really also, Darnell, for us, from my perspective, from both of our perspectives, there was just such a lack of information. A lot of the stuff that we had researched in the States prior to coming down was either inaccurate, incomplete, or just old. And so, we wanted to fill that void in terms of providing quality, reliable information on this area, and then also that the access to properties. There's a few websites in southern Ecuador where you can see listings, but there's no broad marketplace. There's no real place where buyers and sellers can find each other, especially foreign buyers. We had good laughs when we were doing the project. It's like,
we've had a lot of laughs since we've been here.
Right. How do you look for properties? It's like, hey, you come to us. But prior to that, how do you look for properties? You go into the towns and you talk to people. You talk to taxi drivers. You talk to people in the towns. And obviously that's just a very inefficient way to buy and sell properties. It's lousy for sellers because their market is very limited, and it's lousy for buyers because it's hard to find properties. So, we and also, I mean, obviously, we should touch on, the relocation services stuff. We also went through the processes of, getting cell phones. That sounds easy, right? It's different here.
Yeah, or bank accounts.
Bank accounts, right? Visas, bank accounts, all of those things. So, we went through all those processes, as you said, took our lumps in a few of them, but, created all those relationships, and, that stuff is very easy now. We've been here a couple of years. We're integrated in this society. We speak Spanish. Those things are very easy now. Yeah. So we set up a company really to make all of those processes that we sorted out ourselves, more standardized and streamlined, and really just easy for people who are coming now, who want to work with us.
So, I mean, the idea is really that after being here for 2+ years, that when you come here and work with us, it's like you've been here for as long as we've been here.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's funny how different some of those things were. I mean, I remember, we were in Quito. We flew into Quito, and we wanted to open bank accounts, and we wanted to get a safe deposit box. And coming from the States, those two things are really easy.
Oh, which, by the way, that a lady from that bank called me the other day to tell me that she was going to take money out of the account to pay for that. That was the first time that happened in 2 years. So I don't know that they've charged us before that time.
The one in Cuenca.
Yeah.
So so we're in Quito, and we had some valuables we wanted to put in a safe deposit box, and we wanted to open bank accounts because for visas down here, you need, for any permanent visa, any residency visa, you need a bank account. So we go to get bank accounts, and, I don't know, we maybe hit 5 or 6 banks, and not only
six.
I
remember it well.
Not only could we not get visas, not get bank accounts, but it was also impossible to get a safe deposit box.
People laughed at us.
Right, in our pathetic attempt at Spanish at that time. So I mean, it was just it's just an example, but it's really a telling example in terms of, as far as the differences down here with those things. Now you or I can walk into a bank, or walk anybody into a bank and get them a bank account in 2 seconds. But at that time in Quito, we found it impossible without those relationships. We ended up getting a bank account in Cuenca through a lawyer, who we paid, right? Who had a personal connection and got us the accounts. But
one thing that I think we should mention at this point too, it's easy to forget because I think we did a blog post about it, but something that's interesting about the visa laws here is that as Jesse was saying, they charge, that you need a visa, or excuse me, to get a visa, you need a bank account, but you need to have been in the country for at least 6 months to get a visa. Oh no, I'm saying that wrong. But basically, the point is that you need a visa to get a bank account, but a bank account to get a visa. One of the requirements is having had a bank account for a certain period of time, but you can't stay in the country long enough to do that without having without having had a visa,
right.
Unless, of course, you know somebody.
Right. So, right, exactly. The visa, the immigration was telling us we need a bank account. The bank account was telling us, or the banks were telling us we can open a bank account once we have a visa. So that was right. As you said, unless you know somebody, and then you just open a bank.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. So yeah, that was that was an interesting experience, as were all of them. So we've set up this company to make all of those things really easy for anybody who's relocating here. So whether you're looking for short-term housing, you need to deal with your visa, you need to deal with legal matters, you need to open a bank account, you need to get a cell phone. We will help you out with those kinds of things if you're purchasing through us. And then we also have a standalone relocation services option. But anyhow, so yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about this particular part of or Ecuador in general, this particular part of Ecuador. What brought us here? What are the things that stand out to us, both good and bad, about living here and about this part of the world. Most people who are listening to this or researching this probably have not been here.
Right.
And we're a couple years in. It's like we're very now it's sort of we're forgetting how the things that stood out so much at the beginning.
Forget the stuff that stand out, and also just the way that people go about doing things is different. The kind of cultural shock that you experience. Things like, going to the bank and asking them for a bank account, and they're like looking at you like you've got 10 heads, and you're like, this takes 20 minutes back home. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this picture? And that I think is the thing that you forget most, because I think for the most part we've adjusted to the pace of life here and how things are done, and sometimes it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's never been here, and somebody being like, well, why can't I do this? And being frustrated. I had a conversation with a guy the other day. It was actually Ben who was here the other day. And I think he really said it well. He was saying, when you come to a place and you don't know the language, and, this person that you're with is your first point of contact, and they're telling you something that doesn't make sense and communicating in another language, your first instance is to be like, oh, somebody's trying to screw me.
Yes. And I've seen that a lot. You see that with people. You see, foreigners getting upset in those kinds of situations because they think that the people are, sort of trying not to help them. And that's just almost never the case. But yes, that's very spot on. I've noticed that quite a bit. Darnell, talk a little bit about the differences from your perspective in terms of coming from, you were in financial services, squarely in corporate America. I think you were working at that time, 10, 12 hours a day, at least 5 days a week. I remember you used to get up, 5 a.m. to get ready for the day, to be at the office around 7 or 7:30 or whatever it was. Talk a little bit about the differences in terms of, your transition from that sort of lifestyle and what that meant to you. And then, now being here a couple of years, obviously we have our own business and we're working very hard, but just in terms of, those differences, culturally, but also just lifestyle wise for you.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that the biggest difference in lifestyle, which was one of the things that I was really looking for, but had a hard time putting words to at the time, was just not having to do things for show, not having to, send an email at a certain time at night to show my boss that I was, being productive, those kinds of things. Here we work hard, obviously. I mean, it's sometimes, I'm not working any harder here than I was there, working very hard, but, at times you don't have to always, working hard means getting results, not showing people that you're getting results, which are two different things. So if I want to if I want to walk into the office at 11 o'clock on a certain day or leave at a certain time, all I need to do is what I need to do. I don't have to, punch the clock. So that's the biggest difference for me. And also that and also travel, living in an apartment right above the office is pretty convenient as well too. So I'd say those are really the biggest things, is just having, and then also, having a business here where you're really focused on results as opposed to, other stuff. Like we're living in a foreign country, having a business, being able to help people who are trying to do the same things that we're doing, either buy a property, start a business, invest in Ecuador, which, I think I can't really picture a place that's really better to live. Adjustment coming here, but man, I couldn't. It's hard to picture myself being more happy living in a place. I mean, it's got a lot of cool lifestyle benefits that I think people are looking for and just don't know about it for the most part. And as we've talked about from the very beginning, one of our major goals with this company was just to really fill the information gap for people who are looking for what Ecuador has to offer.
Right. And just to give people a sense. So we rent out a really nice office space on the nicest street in Loja. We're paying what, $700?
$700.
Yeah, we're paying $700 a month. Darnell lives upstairs in what I consider one of the nicer apartment buildings in Loja. Are there some apartments nicer? Sure, but this is high end for sure for Loja. You're paying what, $350?
$350 a month.
$350 a month.
Two bedroom, 1.5 bath, large living room, dining room area, kitchen, laundry room area, and subterranean garage.
Right. So, a lot of people have cost of living questions. Cost of living here is, I came from New York, which is obviously an expensive city. Sticker shock in a good way. It's almost hard to spend money. Now there's import taxes here, which maybe we'll get into that a little bit later in terms of some of the drawbacks of living here. But there's import taxes here, so that makes certain things very expensive. If you want to buy electronics, the tires for my truck, for example, four new tires are over $800 because they're imported. So there's some expenses here that you would deal with. But in terms electronics,
basically anything that's important.
Anything, yeah, exactly.
Which is a lot of, other than, food and, your living costs because of rent.
Right.
Or things like that, yeah.
Right. But in terms of, lunch in Ecuador pretty much throughout, but certainly where we are, is between, $1.75 on the lowest end, $3 or $3.50 on the highest end. Average in Loja, I would say, is what, $2.50?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So, and that includes, a meal, soup, and a drink you're getting for $2.50.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about soup too.
Soup is good.
Soup is good. I mean, I've eaten more soup in the last 2 years than I had in my entire life up to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people get sick of the food here, I would say. Certainly a lot of rice and beans and a lot of meat would be your average kind of Ecuadorian, cuisine. But I don't know. I like it. I think it's decent. But yeah, soup, rice, beans, meat. If you like that, you're in good shape.
You came to the right place.
Came to the right place. But yeah, also in terms of prices, I mean, gosh, for $5 at the market, you could get enough food to cook for a few days. It's almost hard to spend money. Taxi rides, for example, most of the city is covered in $1 taxi ride. If you're going from end to end of the city, it's a little more.
But no more than, I don't think from north to south you would pay more than $5 in a taxi.
Right. And that would be what, like we're talking 20-minute ride or something.
Yeah, 20 minutes, maybe even a half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if you're anywhere within, the main areas of the city, it's $1. You get into a, 10, 15, 20-minute ride, it starts to go up a little bit, but that just, gives you a little sense of prices.
Not to mention, I mean, the public transportation here is very good.
It is very good.
Yeah, with the buses, it's 30 cents to get on the bus and go for as far as they'll take you, or to the route ends. So,
right, and they come all the time, and they're all over the city. They have great coverage, and they're safe. I mean, that's another thing. I think that's another concern or topic that comes up for people when considering Central or South America is safety. Now, is all of Ecuador completely safe? No, but statistically, it's much, 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 much safer than the United States. And this part of Ecuador is, I mean, gosh, it's hard to even for me to imagine how safe it is. I mean, there's just no crime. I mean, nothing happens. Nothing happens. The worst thing you could ever hear about would be like somebody, gets into a house and, takes a computer. And that is extremely rare. I mean, there's just no crime. There's just no crime. Which is nice. I mean, I know you, for example, walk around the city, all the time. Any time of day, any time of night, anywhere in the city, and without any concern for your safety.
Right. Yeah. All the time. And at all times at night. And I mean, I've been to places like Machala on the coast, which the coast is certainly a little bit more dicey in that way, but not. You just have to be aware of yourself and not do anything that common sense wouldn't lead you to do. But I would, even there, and I don't really know anybody, and I feel perfectly safe walking around.
Yeah.
Now, when you get out to Guayaquil and Quito, yeah, I've, heard stories of people that I know personally getting, having somebody, take their phone or something like that, which, certainly that happens. But,
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, people get robbed on the street, once in a while. But I mean, gosh, much, much less than back home.
Yeah.
Much less than back home. So yeah, very safe city, very safe area.
Jesse, one thing that I think now that we're on that is a question that comes up when I talk to people or get emails or calls in the office is, what's it like for you having a 7-year-old daughter here? Finding schooling for her, after school activities. Why don't you touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, my daughter was, I guess, must have been 5 when we moved down here.
She
4.
She had just turned 6 because her birthday was in July, and then we came
in July, right?
Yeah. Right. I'm reminding you about your daughter's birthday.
Yeah, I'm getting exposed here on air, just how bad I am with dates. But so yeah, I had a just turned 6-year-old daughter when we came down, and yeah, obviously had to deal with schools and all those kinds of things. Now, I would say your Ecuadorian public school is about like your U.S. public school, and obviously your U.S. public school, in terms of quality, varies a lot by where you are. And I would say here, you'd be talking somewhere to middle of the road to slightly below in terms of your public school experience. Private school, you have a lot of options. So, my daughter goes to what I consider to be the best private school in Loja. I just got my bill for this year. It went up a little bit. I think I'm paying somewhere around $170 a month. Just as a point of comparison, I was paying in New York for, just a decent, okay, private school, $1,200 a month. So, that's kind of indicative of some of those things. And yeah, the after school stuff is fantastic. I'm talking in Loja. So if you were in some of the smaller towns, you would have to travel to Loja to get a lot of these things, although some of them might be there. But, the after school stuff's fantastic. Loja is a city that's known for its culture in terms of music and arts. And so there's really a ton of options in that way. My daughter, over the last couple of years at various times, has done ballet, singing, dance, gymnastics. She's currently in Taekwondo. She's done tennis. And I've been extremely pleased with all of those. Also, again, on the costs, just, it's come back to, it's just kind of hard to spend money here. I think the most expensive program she ever did was like $30 or $35 a month in terms of her after school programs. Bus picks her up in the morning, takes her to school. Again, some of those things they're just nice here in the sense that there's just not all of those. And, this brings in a lot of other topics, maybe too much to cover just in this one podcast, but a lot of those things are just much less pressure filled than they are back home, much less, you don't have the sort of lawsuit mentality that you have back home, and as a result, it's just a lot easier to talk to people and deal with things. So the bus driver picks her up, drops her off. If I'd like the bus driver to drop her off at a different location, I just, shoot him a text or give him a ring, and he does so. I've been happy. The kids learn the language so quickly. My daughter is completely fluent in Spanish, speaks Spanish without an accent. It's quite amazing. I'm a little jealous of her in that way. That's been, a very positive experience.
Yeah, one thing that sticks out to me about that is that you've got the bus driver's personal cell phone number. Right. And how many people at home have that kind of relationship with, somebody like that?
Right, right. And those cultural differences I appreciate here. I think, we're getting into that. What are some of the cultural differences that you don't appreciate about living here?
I would say, all of them are pretty general, from what I understand, just about Latin America in general. It's just how people are with time. Mm-hmm. Which, you adjust to that just because time doesn't mean the same thing that it does back home, but you need some time here to figure that out. But yeah, I'd say the time thing for sure.
In terms of just people not showing up or being late.
Right. You make an appointment with somebody, but you always have to call to confirm. So, I think for most people, it's just a matter of, myself included, it's just a matter of measuring expectations. If you expect one thing and get another in a negative way, then, you're upset about it. You've got some negative feelings, or, you might be inconvenienced, or you might have somebody who you're attempting to do something for, and then you're relying on that person because they told you they were going to do something, and then they end up not doing it and giving you some excuse that you find to be pretty trivial. So that was frustrating. It's not as frustrating now. What else do I find really frustrating about here? It's like, I hate to sound like a cheerleader. It's just that a lot of the things that are bad are just not that bad. Like they just are the 10% of the things that I don't like are just overshadowed by I would say the 90% of things that I do like. But yeah, I guess just in the interest of explaining to other people who would be coming here, I think that the time thing is what would bother a lot of people, especially Americans.
Right.
And especially the people who are of the age who are coming here, or the biggest group of people who are coming to Ecuador, people who are close to retirement or are already retired. That generation of Americans, it's kind of like your word's your bond kind of thing. And, you're going to tell me you're going to do this and you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a hard adjustment when they meet an Ecuadorian. They're like, hey, let's go out for coffee at this time. And they're all ready to go. They're at the place on time. And, the Ecuadorian person doesn't show up, or right. And then they have to call that person. And then the person's like, yeah, they're very nonchalant about it, or what seems to be nonchalant. Sure. And they come over and they're like, they might show up 20 minutes later, or they might not show up at all. And then, the person calls them and they'll give them, oh yeah, my kid had this, or, I had to do this or something like that. Let's do it for another time. And the person's, it's kind of, I could see them finding it deflating, especially if that's one of their only friends who are here, It's
sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, definitely a different relationship with time. Both in terms of, just time in general, in terms of the things you're talking about showing up, but also just in terms of People relate to money people don't relate to time as money here. So you can ask of people's time and they'll give it to you very, very willingly. There's not the time as is money expectation, which has also been, for me, definitely been a change, an adjustment, from coming from back home. I think it's important to go through for people a little bit in terms of what our process was with choosing Ecuador and then choosing this part of Ecuador. Southern Ecuador is what we went through a process. We looked at we're interested in South America. We researched to some degree the entire continent. There's a lot of interesting places here, Brazil and Uruguay and Paraguay and Chile and even Colombia. And, there's just a lot of interesting places to be here. Part of the reason that we settled on Ecuador and ultimately Southern Ecuador, it doesn't have any of the risks, or I should say it doesn't have the majority of the risks that some of the other countries have that ultimately, for that reason were ruled out. So no fault lines, no volcanoes, no nuclear energy facilities, some year-round warmth, some of the best soil and water in the world. Things here grow like I've never seen. It's unbelievable how fast food grows and produces, and it's the size of everything. I remember us. When we were looking at all those properties in the first 6 months or a year that we were here, I remember us just being so amazed with the vegetation and the size of the animals, like ladybugs that are the size of your fingernail.
Or how about that guy's pit bull that he had? What was it, a bulldog? It was I
remember that, yeah.
And the thing was at least 1.5 times the size of the biggest bulldog I'd ever seen.
Yeah, and it sort of just seems like everything here is like that. The vegetation here, the growth is just incredible.
And the variety of things that grow as well too. Things that that you normally don't see grown together here in just even between here and, Malacatos, for example, which is, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 minutes away, completely different climate. You drop off about 2,000 feet in sea level and, all of a sudden it's, 10 to 15 degrees warmer. It's essentially a tropical climate where you can grow all kinds of things, the 2 or 3 things that don't grow here, you can grow there.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing also for our listeners to know is that climate, or I should say temperature in Ecuador is essentially controlled by altitude. So the higher you go, the colder it is, the lower you go, the warmer. Are there, little variances within that? Yes, but that's the rule of thumb. Another thing that's, I think, interesting for people to understand is the rainy and dry season. Mm-hmm. So, depending on the altitude. Now, there's certain altitudes generally. If you're in the rainforest, so if you're in the Amazon, the jungle regions, you're going to have year-round warmth and year-round rain. If you're in the Sierra, depending on the altitude and depending on the topography, you're going to get a little bit different climates, but mostly they're dependent on altitude. So we live in Loja, for example, around 6,500 to 100 to 7,000 feet above sea level. We have year-round green, and we have basically 2 climates. Basically, you've got 6 months of a little bit warmer and a little bit drier, and 6 months of a little bit colder and a little bit more wet. The majority of the majority of southern Ecuador, at least in the mountains, experiences a rainy and a dry season. So, for example, Darnell was just talking about Malacatos. That's a town south of Loja that's, 40 minutes away. It's also about 10 minutes down the road from Vilcabamba, which is a very popular international town. Those have, gosh, I mean, near perfect climates. You're talking about year-round temperature, daytime high, 72 to 82, year-round. But they have two climates. So starting around June, I guess, it starts to dry out. And then stays dry until like a month from now, so about October. So the mountains that are for the rest of the year lush and green and look beautiful are brown for that period of time. It also gets windier and a few degrees cooler. So you might get a daytime high in Vilcabamba or Malacatos in the dry season. You might be more in the low to mid 70s, whereas the rest of the year you're going to be more like the mid to upper 70s to low 80s occasionally. But obviously a pretty perfect climate, but very interesting in that way where you've got your period of the year that's the mountains are brown, and your period of the year where your mountains are green and everything looks lush and green. Obviously, water management becomes an issue in some of those places during the dry season. So if you're looking for properties in Ecuador, if you're interested in, growing food, but even if you're just interested in keeping your property looking nice, you want to make sure you've got a year-round water source. Anything you want to add on that subject?
You're right. Well, the one thing I think, just in terms of giving people an idea of what it's like being here, when we first got here, we were so confused about the fact that you've got people who have homes here in Loja, but also have a home in Malacatos or Vilcabamba 40 to 50 minutes away. The thing is, though, is that distance isn't really indicative of how different the weather can be.
Right.
And so people have their second home where they'll spend the weekends with their family, where they've got a larger piece of land and they'll go out and, barbecue or, just spend some time in a warmer climate. And a lot of times people have homes that are worth more than the homes that they live in, during the week out there. And they, may spend between, 48 and 6 hours there per week.
Right. Maximum. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the land of microclimates.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, I mean, we're in Loja. We can drive, 45 minutes to Catamayo and be in a much drier, much hotter climate, almost desert-like. We can drive another direction, 35 minutes, 40 minutes to Malacatos, Vilcabamba area, Landangui area, and be in, I sort of describe it as like San Diego type weather, basically just 75 to 80 all year. We can drive an hour in another direction and be in the rainforest. And then Loja is a little higher and therefore a little cooler, stays green year-round, doesn't have the same type of dry season. In fact, the dry season here is basically opposite to the dry season in most of southern Ecuador. If you're in Vilcabamba and you keep going south, eventually you hit Yangana, maybe 25 minutes or something, 20 minutes down the road. Mm-hmm. And that's much cooler and also stays green year-round. 5 minutes, 10 minutes on that same road before you hit Yangana, you get to Kinara. Well, that's extremely dry right now.
Yeah, right.
So it's just microclimate. I mean, we bought a big piece of land that has 3 distinct climates on it, and you could, if you want to decipher it out further, just that one piece of land, it's really even 4 or 5 climates if you want to get sort of more specific with it.
Yeah, we're in Loja. I mean, from north to south, you go down in elevation, and it's a completely different climate. You can be in one part of the city and see another part of the city where it's raining, but it's not raining where you are. Yeah, or right. The sun can be out and it can be raining, and not like a sun shower, but like it's raining. Right. It's raining and the sun is out.
Right.
There's no clouds above you and there's rain.
There's rain. Yeah, it's very cool watching the rain sort of roll through the city in different areas, and it's, as you said, very common. You're sitting in warm, sunny, dry area watching rain in this part of the city or that part of the city.
Yeah, that you could walk to in 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if that much, right? Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think, a question a lot of people always have, about Ecuador and about coming here is obviously visa options. Purchasing options in terms of real estate. Ecuador offers really great visa options. Darnell, go ahead and touch on a few of those as far as the residency visa.
Okay. So with the residency visas, you've basically, I would break those down into three different categories. You have the professional visa, you have the investor visa, and you have the pensioner visa. With generally speaking, with any of those, they have different requirements, but ones that they all have are criminal records that you'll need to get on the federal level from the FBI and then also from your state of residence. And you'll need to get that apostilled. So essentially a notary stamp that's recognized internationally. So we would definitely recommend getting those done before you come here. Just to make the process as easy and simple and straightforward as possible. We have solutions if you need that, but they can be costly just because of the cost of shipping documents back and forth and things like that. And also, dealing with customs here is no small feat. So I try to avoid that whenever possible. With a pensioner visa, for example, something specific to that visa is that you'll need proof of your ability to sustain yourself financially, which Ecuador considers to be a pension of at least $800 a month. With an investor visa, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can purchase a property or buy a bank CD that has a value of at least $30,000. And with that, you can apply for an investor visa. And in the case of a professional visa, the Ecuadorian government has a list of approved colleges and universities per country. And if you have a degree from any one of those countries, then Ecuador wants you to come here and presumably add your expertise that you have to their economy, and with that, having that degree that's on that list apostilled and bringing it here, or if your university isn't on there because they don't have all of them, if there's a process that you can go through to register that, and with that and get that apostilled and then apply. So those are really the biggest components. The other components are just things like having at least 6 months of validity on your passport. And those kinds of things can all be done here fairly easily, but getting the documents that you need from your home country apostilled in here are the most important parts, and the other small logistical parts we can always get set up here fairly easily.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that jumps out at me with the visa options is just how low the bar is. I mean, it's just really easy to immigrate here.
Yeah.
I mean, Darnell, for example, you're on a professional visa,
right?
What did you what you went through to take care of that? It meant showing that you had a college degree,
which who in the United States doesn't have one of those,
right? So you have a college degree, you're now a resident. 3 years later, you can apply for citizenship and you get your passport. So yeah, I mean, it's just and obviously the pensioners visa for retirees or people who have a pension of any sort is obviously a great option as well. But I mean, yeah, most people have a college degree, so you have a college degree, you can come to Ecuador and get your cedula, which is your national ID card.
Yeah. The other thing about that too is that it's such a low bar for just getting into the country. I mean, there's maybe 10 countries who need an actual visa to come here. Everyone else, they just present their passport and they're allowed to be in the country for at least
right. And that's certainly
3 months.
And that certainly applies to any of the quote Western countries,
right.
U.S., Canada, Europe.
Yeah, I think the countries on the list that you can are like maybe Iraq and Iran and like Kazakhstan or something like that. Right. It's a very short list, and And even if you're coming from one of those countries, which I've met some people who have come from those countries, it's fairly easy to get a visa at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, if you're looking at, that's really a major hurdle for people if they're looking at relocation or investment options. I mean, which is just not a hurdle here. The other thing I think is, interesting in those ways, if you're an investor, and there's certainly some drawbacks to investing in Ecuador, but if you're an investor, there's no barriers to foreign ownership of anything. There's no export barriers whatsoever. So if in fact they encourage them. So if you, as most countries do, but if you come here and you want to set up a business, some sort of export business or some sort of business, you're not going to have any issues being a foreigner and getting that done. And you're doing it in an environment where your cost of doing business in terms of energy costs and those sort of things are just exceptionally low.
Energy. I mean, Ecuador is the smallest producing member of OPEC, and they subsidize oil and gasoline. So you can buy a diesel truck and buy a gallon of diesel for $1.03.
Right.
I think you have a diesel truck that maybe, how much does that cost you to fill? Like $20 or something like that?
Almost always, between about $17.50 and $19.50 a tank of gas for a 4x4 diesel truck.
Yeah, premium gasoline is $2.12. So, some of that's, something that makes, operating a business in terms of cost in a lot of ways fairly low. If you're not dealing with, importing stuff, your fuel, your energy cost, rent are all fairly reasonable.
Right. Yeah, and there's just, one of the stories, and I didn't know this when I came here, but one of the things that I've come to, has really struck me about the story of Ecuador. From a business standpoint, this is not, if you just want to live here, it's a great place to live. But if you're looking at it from a business standpoint or an investment standpoint, Ecuador had a currency collapse. Was it 2000?
2000, they dollarized.
Right.
It started a little bit earlier, but that was kind of the crescendo.
Okay. So 2000, as a result of the sucre collapsing, they dollarized, so they're on the U.S. dollar as the official currency now. We're in 2015, so that was only 15 years ago. They also had quite a bit of political instability in a similar stretch of time. So we're talking about a country that's new in terms of having monetary and political stability. And also, I guess another very important piece of that is the infrastructure. Ecuador has invested something like $7 or $8 billion since 2007. I believe.
Yeah, 2007.
Since 2007 in infrastructure. So the roads, the systems of electricity and water and sewage and all those kinds of things. The airports, the ports are just as good as you'll find anywhere in the world. And so you've got that sort of confluence of events happening all within the last number of years. And as a result of that, it's just a new market. So there just has been, there's just insufficient capital here for the opportunities. So if you're looking at a country to invest in, you can go to Brazil, you can go to Chile, you can go to some of these other places that maybe are more established, but you're going to be competing with a lot more people, and you're going to be dealing, with it, which is fine, but you're going to be dealing with a more established market. In Ecuador, those same opportunities that you would find in those other countries exist, and they exist with less competition and at a cheaper price. So for me, that's really one of the most interesting stories, one of the most interesting parts of the story about Ecuador, because it has all that infrastructure, and it's got some of the cheapest arable land in the region. It's got amazing amount of water and minerals and so forth, and there's just not a whole lot of investment capital.
Right. And think about the opportunities here from even a tourism perspective. Mm-hmm. It's a country that has all these different climates. I mean, has all these different climates where you can get from the Amazonian region to the coast in I don't know, 6 hours in a car. You can fly from one end of the country to the other for as cheap as $70.
As cheap as, well, yeah, round trip. Yeah,
round trip. So this country has the world famous Galapagos Islands that a lot of people, when I left home, didn't know was part of Ecuador. In fact, I didn't know
that.
And there's so many other incredible tourism destinations that rival many others across South America that people know. They're just not internationally known here. So from a tourism perspective, I mean, this is just a huge opportunity because there's just so much to see. It's got the most animal species per square foot or per square meter in the world.
Yeah.
You can just see so much here. And, for people who want to surf, for people, really adventure tourism, hiking, rock climbing, bird watching. Yeah. This is one of the premier places in the world. It's just here at a discount price.
Yeah. Hot springs, jungle adventures, lots of indigenous all over. No, exactly. And again, there's not a ton of competition in a lot of those things, and a growing market. So a place that's really being discovered, and that's really for us the thing. Why we settled in this part of Ecuador, in southern Ecuador, is it's the least discovered part of the country, the least populous part of the country, and maybe. From our perspective, really the nicest part of the country. So we're kind of in the least discovered part of a underdiscovered country that's
right.
Trending in the right direction
and has all the infrastructure in place already.
Right.
It's not like there's something that we're waiting for. Oh, this will be a good opportunity if they build a road here. It's just a matter of this will be a great opportunity once enough people know about it and they come.
Yeah, and they are coming. I mean, and if Cuenca, which is a great city. It's a city about 3 hours from Loja by car. Great city. It's the destination for retirees now. It may be the most popular retiree destination in the world.
If not, it's certainly top 5, and it has been that way for the last 5 consecutive years.
Yeah. So most people go to Cuenca. It's a great city. I mean, I think both you and I enjoy Cuenca. Cuenca is also in the southern part of Ecuador. Part of we didn't go to Cuenca because it didn't have all the things we were looking for, including climate. It's cold. It can be pretty cold in Cuenca, and it can get cool in Loja as well. But if you don't want cool, you don't have to go very far to outside of Loja.
I think how I like to describe it is the city of Cuenca is much nicer in any way you can imagine than the city of Loja, but the province of Loja is, in my mind, offers a lot more opportunities and options for climate, for growing, for lots of other things than the province of Azuay, where Cuenca is.
Yeah, I think I agree with that completely. And even just comparing the cities, and you're absolutely right. Cuenca it's a prettier city. It's got a lot more. It's got a lot more just to offer in terms of restaurants, stores, amenities, those kinds of things. But then you have the flip side of that. There's a lot of traffic in Cuenca. There's not in Loja.
Mm-hmm.
And Loja is a little bit cheaper, both in terms of purchase and rental.
Right.
And it's warmer. So it's definitely a trade-off on those kinds of things between Cuenca and Loja, which I consider two great cities. Yeah.
The other thing too, I think that's kind of a trade-off for some people is the expat community.
Right.
Cuenca's got has the largest expat community in all of Ecuador. And so, for people who are looking to connect with an expat community, that's going to be a better fit for them. Whereas here in the city of Loja, there's not an expat community to speak of. I know of foreigners here that I've never met before. And I've had people come into town and say, hey, do you know so-and-so or do you know so-and-so? Nope, never heard of them, or have heard of them and haven't met them. So I think that, here it's more so a group of people who are integrating more into the culture here,
Right. Exactly.
because there's just not an expat community to speak of. There's not that infrastructure that's in place. There will be eventually as people come into town, but it hasn't really been formed yet. And I think that's probably the largest cultural difference between these two cities as it stands today.
Yeah, and I think that obviously you nailed it. I mean, I would say, and this is nothing but a guess, but just from living and doing business in Loja, I would doubt there's more than 100 or 200 expats in Loja, right now, living in Loja right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, even 100 would be a high number, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's 6 months ago it might have been 20. If that. So it's an interesting place because there isn't foreigners, but they do seem to be coming now.
Yeah.
And I expect that to pick up greatly over the next period of time.
So many people just passing through and checking it out. Both people that I've just seen in the street, people that I've just struck up a conversation with, in addition to people who have called us specifically and told us that they were coming into town and asked to have us show them around and see properties and things. So that there's a big wave of people who have expressed interest in coming here, and I expect in the next, if we're talking in the next 6 months, that expat community could very easily double.
Or even multiply by 5.
Yeah.
I think those trends are very, very clear at this point. And that's interesting for people because if you're, some people obviously are just looking to retire. They're just looking for a place that, their money stretches. But also a lot of people are looking for, are younger or are looking for, a place where they can start a business or live their life in some sort of more robust way than just, stretching their dollar. And, for me, Loja is interesting in that way because of those trends, because there are no businesses really that serve the expat community to speak of. I mean, there's a few restaurants, a couple of things here and there, but in terms of if you were coming here now and you were looking at businesses that are going to serve the growing expat community, gosh, you'd really be in the sweet spot in the next 6 months or a year.
I mean, think about think about short-term rentals. How many people contact us saying that they want to get to know Loja, but they want to just check it out for 3 months. Well, good luck finding somebody who's going to rent you a place for 3 months, an Ecuadorian landlord. But if there was somebody who came here to serve that purpose, gave people, 1, 2, 3 bedroom apartments that were furnished, they would have a very, they'd have a thriving business for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing, almost a warning or at least, a piece of advice to people, having, both you and I didn't speak a word of Spanish when we moved here. We both speak the language now, well enough to do business and live our lives. One thing I would just say to people who are considering, whether it's Ecuador or somewhere else in Latin America, if you're thinking about coming here and settling here and living here, you've really got to change your mindset a bit in terms of your way of life, basically, and you really have to be willing to take on the cultural stuff and the language. Do lots of people in Cuenca and Vilcabamba come here and never learn Spanish? Yeah. But I would really say that your quality of life is much improved if you do learn the language.
Especially in a place that doesn't have an existing expat community.
Right. Like Loja and almost any other town outside of Vilcabamba in southern Ecuador. So if you're gonna come here, I would suggest you to really be willing to accept the cultural differences that you're going to find here, integrate, make friends, learn the language, and do those kinds of things as opposed to coming here expecting to live your life exactly as you lived it in in wherever you're coming from.
At a discount price.
Right. Which is the mindset, I think, of a lot of people.
Right, and that's certainly, I think, one of the trends just driving the interest here is that you can live the lifestyle that they told you that you could live in the United States on Social Security in 1950 here.
Here, right.
And actually do that.
Yeah, which you can.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I would 100% agree. A change of mindset in that way will do people a lot of good.
Yeah.
So should we leave it there?
Yeah. Let's wrap it up. www.ab, that's A as in apple, B as in boy, Ecuador.com. Probably should have gotten that in much earlier and many more times.
Yeah, well, it's the first run here. The first run, so we'll get better as we go along. We appreciate all you guys for tuning in, and tune in again next week. Also, I'd encourage everybody here to get on the website, sign up for our newsletter. We're sending those out regularly. And for anybody who wants to speak with us live and direct, you can reach us toll free at 888-999-0948. 0948. Thank you. 888-999-0948.
That's the one. And we wanted to do a little introduction show and, sort of cover the broad scope of our transition and Ecuador and all that. I hope we did an okay job at that. In the future, we'll be covering more specific topics. So we'll be doing a show on, for example, visa options or investment options or those kinds of things. And we'll also start having guests in the future. So you'll be able to hear from, other expats in Ecuador or local attorneys who, have experience in the things that you're interested in, such as business or visas and those kinds of things. So we hope to bring you informative shows in the future.
All right, everybody, thanks again for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.